My parents praised my golden child sister while calling me an embarrassment. Now I'm successful, and they're begging me to rescue her career. My parents, who have not spoken to me in 5 years, just contacted me. I am 29 years old. They want me to help them out, or more specifically, my sister. My 31-year-old sister Claire has always been the golden child. My parents never bothered to hide it because she was superior than me in every way back then. Especially academically, which my parents never let me forget, since they kept telling me that she was doing so much better than me at school, and that I needed to buckle down if I wanted to be in the same league as my sister. She was accepted into a renowned institution, and 5 years ago she became the company's youngest vice president. She had been working there since she graduated, and she had always been able to support herself. But later, when she made history by becoming the company's youngest vice president, her expensive corporate career became the norm for me to beat, and my parents couldn't stop rubbing it in. To be honest, I was not interested in working a 9-to-5 job. I'm sure life has its advantages, but I've wanted to be an entrepreneur since I first heard the term. 5 years ago, after working at many locations and accumulating experience in the field that I wanted to work in, I decided that I was finally going to establish my own business, modern and edgy automobile accessories that I designed myself. I had spent enough time on research and development and had a solid business concept to move forward with. So I decided to go to my parents about it first, since despite how they had always treated my sister, I had assumed they would want the best for me as well. After all, they were my parents. So I decided to tell them about it after they had prepared a party for my sister's new employment. 2 days after the party, I approached them in person and explained my idea. I expected some type of response, but instead they just laughed and thought I was attempting to fool them. They found it insulting that after years of self-education, this was my big idea for my future firm. I told them I was serious, but they said I shouldn't quit my work because they'd be embarrassed to introduce their son as a failure. They said they knew my business was doomed from the start because I was not capable, and they didn't want me to fail as severely as my sister. So I had better continue with the job I already had. I was quite offended, so I decided to quarrel with them. I told them that I would go ahead with the business whether or not they supported it. They told me I could do whatever I pleased, but I wasn't free from the repercussions. They warned me that if I pursued my business idea, they would have to take me out of their lives because I would be an embarrassment to them, something they were already aware of. They also expressed their displeasure with having to introduce their children, one of whom is a vice president at a famous company and the other, at the age of 25, is still trying to sort out his own life. They said they had been thinking about having this conversation with me for a long time, and they finally told me that I could either continue working my way up at my current job and not embarrass them, or I could do whatever I wanted and make a fool of myself. But then I'd lose them. I think it's evident what I did. I decided to cut them out of my life and never spoke to them again after that. I have also not communicated with Claire since then, because she clearly chose our parents' side over mine, which I am comfortable with. She was too haughty in any case, so I avoided her from the start. I'd been dealing with vehicles for a long time, and that's where my company idea came from, so I believed in it. I knew this was something that people wanted, so I decided to go in blind and simply prove my parents wrong. I quit my job and began working for my objective. Now I see that was a risky move, and I should not take it so proudly. I wouldn't advocate it to anyone, but it worked out for me. Within a few months, I had some investors on board and was able to launch my own firm. It was tough at first. I was basically living hand to mouth, relying solely on word-of-mouth marketing. People became aware of my business, and I gained an increasing number of consumers. Then, after approximately a year and a half, things began to pick up and there was no going back. I'm pretty comfy right now. I have my own place, which is very wonderful. I live in a fantastic area, drive a nice car, and have everything I ever wanted. I wouldn't say I'm a millionaire, but I'm doing well for myself, and I don't consider myself a failure as my parents had expected. So, I'd say I proved them incorrect, and I'm really thrilled about that. I'm so thrilled about it that I don't even feel the need to include their face, because it's not worth it. Anyway, I have not contacted them in the last 5 years. I even married my girlfriend of 8 years and we've been married for 2 years. Last month we discovered that she was also pregnant. I've reached so many milestones, yet I've never sought to contact my parents. They know where to locate me. They can practically contact any relative and ask where I live so they can pay me a visit. I know they know everything about my life since I've maintained in touch with the rest of our family, and they tell me that my parents ask about me all the time, yet never try to contact me. I suppose it is their method of coping with things. Anyway, they eventually contacted me last week and asked if I'd be willing to meet them. I discussed it with my wife and she said she wanted me to go ahead and see what this was all about. They had not said anything in the communication they had sent me, so I had no idea what to anticipate. But I went ahead and visited them at their home. When I arrived, they greeted me kindly, but I could tell there was something going on. Even when I lived with them, they were never as polite to me. So, even while they made small conversation with me, I sensed they were preparing for something. They finally addressed the elephant in the room. They told me they had heard about my business and wanted to congratulate me. They made no apologies and simply stated that they were delighted I had been able to prove them incorrect and that their initial mistrust had vanished. That was wonderful, and I didn't know what to say, so I simply smiled. But then they told me Claire had been unfortunate in the last few months. Apparently her company was not doing well, and there had been many layoffs. Even high management had been fired, including her. So for the past 4 months she had been sitting at home doing nothing. My parents told me that she had been trying to find another employment, but after working for the same firm for so long, she didn't know what to do, and was quite depressed about how things turned out for her. I found it perplexing that they were talking about her because there wasn't much I could do, so I simply let them continue because I wanted to see where they were going with this talk. After a while they got to the point and asked whether I would be willing to hire my sister. She was currently too depressed to apply for employment on her own, and all of the offers she would be willing to offer her a position in my company, one that paid well and allowed her to bring her own expertise to the table. When they asked the question, I had no idea what to answer, so I told them I needed some time to think about it, and will let them know my decision later. I didn't say yes on purpose since I wasn't sure how to reply. I should have realized they weren't approaching me for no reason, given that they had previously had the opportunity but had never taken it. They were rather happy with themselves. I believed they expected me to say yes, but after returning home I thought about it for a long, and after consulting with my wife decided to decline. She works in a bank and has little to do with my company, but she assured me that this was a professional environment. And here everything I say goes. So she didn't want to interfere. If I thought I wouldn't be able to work well with my sister, that was what I should do. In any case, she didn't believe my parents' attempts to reconnect with me were sincere, so I had no need to comply. Anyway, I had never pledged to help. Therefore, I had no obligation to provide her with a job. I didn't want to tell them about it since I knew if I said no, they'd take advantage of the situation and make me appear bad. I attempted to avoid any confrontation, but then they began texting me every day to see what my response was. I even ignored it, but they called me back 2 days later and told me I needed to respond. So I informed them that I had thought about it and after much discussion had decided that I could not work well with Claire, and did not want her to work with me. We'd never had a nice relationship, so I didn't feel obligated to hire her or them. When I mentioned that, they completely flipped out. They began yelling at me about everything they had done for me, including raising me and paying for everything I desired as a child. And now, when they wanted me to repay the favor, I was turning my back on them and pretending that I owed them nothing. I thought it was an extremely harsh thing to say, considering they did everything for me back then because I was completely reliant on them. To be honest, I believe it would be unlawful to simply refuse to do that for me. Besides, that wasn't the point. So I tried to explain to them that I wouldn't be able to work effectively with Claire, which was the only reason I didn't want her in my company. I didn't think they needed to yell at me and behave like that just because of this. Also, we haven't spoken in 5 years because they told me they didn't believe in me and wouldn't invest in my business, so they had no right to think I'd let them bully me around. But they continued to shout at me, claiming that they had only contacted me because they believed that after 5 years, I would have finally let it go, now that I was doing well. Instead, I was being selfish, clinging on to old grudges and unwilling to aid my own family. They reminded me that Claire was my sister, and because she was in difficulty, I needed to be there for her. They even claimed she would have done the same for me if I had been in her situation. They informed me that if my business had failed, they would have supported me, and I owed it to them to support her as well. It became quite unclear and the dispute heated up. After a while, I informed them I didn't want to talk to them anymore, so I hung up and blocked their numbers. Since then, I've been quite confused about my thoughts because of what my parents said, about how they would have supported me if I had in Claire's situation. I spoke with my wife about it, and she claims that they only said these things because I was not in her position, and they were attempting to manipulate me. So I don't have to fall for any of that because they haven't even apologized to me yet, and yet expect me to help her out. My sister was never kind to me as a child, and everyone continually picked on me. I know my wife is correct, yet I have a nagging feeling of guilt. I'm not sure. I simply feel uneasy about everything. Am I the idiot for not hiring my sister after she lost her corporate job? Update 1. Thank you very much for responding to my post. It's been a while since I spoke with my folks and I know what I did wasn't such a huge thing. To be honest, it's unlikely that my sister will never find work again, it's just that I don't want to work with her. I mentioned that I had discussed it with my wife, and the two of us had chosen to remain with our decision. But that doesn't set well with my parents. They've been making it sound like I've always been envious of my sister, and was excited about the opportunity to do this to my family. I don't even understand why they're taking this so seriously, given that they've been contacting every single relative we have about it. It's not like these relatives are just talking to them and bringing it up in conversation. They go out of their way to text them and tell them all about me. It's ludicrous how they're acting, and I believe it's a call for attention, but I won't give it to them. They have been blocked, and no matter what they do, I will not unblock them or engage with them about it. Some relatives who tried to contact me even sent me screenshots. I answered to them by explaining the full incident. It's not like they didn't already know. For the past 5 years, my parents and I have run into each other at family gatherings but never spoken, so most people were aware of our strained relationship. But this is going too far, directly involving relatives and making me seem awful. Anyway, after I cleared things with several of my relatives, the majority of them urged me not to worry about my parents. They were not going to turn against me because they knew what had happened in the past. They understand that my parents are overreacting right now. That's what I'm happy about right now. Honestly, my wife is pregnant, so I don't think I have time to worry about these things right now. I had planned to make the announcement in a couple of weeks, but I guess I'll do it sooner, just so my folks will get the message and quit bothering me. I think it's a nice concept, but we're not sure if it will work because my parents are quite callous. They might even try to disturb us despite knowing my wife is pregnant. I would not put it past them. Update 2. Hello. So my wife and I announced the pregnancy on social media a few days ago. It's been roughly 10 days since I last spoke with my parents. Most of my relatives congratulated me, but then I received an email from an unknown sender claiming that my child will suffer as a result of my actions toward my family. I immediately recognized my parents. It had to be. Because no one else would even think of uttering something so heinous. My baby hasn't even been born yet, and they're already wishing us ill because I refused to help my sister. It's not like Claire had sought me directly for assistance, in which case I may have considered things. My parents, however, wanted me to offer her a job. Anyway, that's not the point. Even if I had done something truly awful, I do not believe they would have the right to say such things. I didn't inform my wife about the email since I didn't want to upset her. Even though she is still in the early stages of her pregnancy, reading stuff like these is really disappointing. I decided to deal with this on my own. I went over to my parents' place to speak with them in person. I didn't want to unblock them, so visiting them was the only option to communicate. But they refused to even open the door to let me in. Most likely because they knew what they had done was wrong. So I just spoke to them from outside their house and I completely lost my patience. I raged at them, telling them that they had no right to say such things, especially given how they had treated me during my childhood, and for the previous 5 years. As if I wasn't even a member of the family. They wanted a piece of my achievement and wanted to share it with my sister. Even if they had never compelled Claire to do such things when I was struggling. To be honest, they had not even supported me when I was struggling, so they did not deserve to communicate with me at this point. I informed them that whatever they were doing was ineffective since it was further isolating me from them. I also stated that I never wanted to speak with them again, and even if they apologized, I would not forgive them in the future. So they could say goodbye to any assistance from me when they retired, and they would never get to meet their grandchild either. After saying that, I left and returned home. And I'm really relieved right now. I'd been holding these things back for a long time, ever since they began bothering me. But it was about time that I responded appropriately. I have not yet informed my wife about this interaction because I do not want to disturb her. I don't think I will, at least until the pregnancy is over. Update 3. Hi. After I spoke with my parents in person last week, they decided to rest for a time and do nothing. I also had a pregnancy announcement party at my place for certain family and close friends. I anticipated my folks to do something that day, but they didn't bother. So I assumed they had finally moved on from this entire experience and I was attempting to do the same. But then this morning Claire called me when I was at work. That was weird because she had ceased speaking with me 5 years ago, and I had no idea what she wanted. For a brief moment, I considered that she may approach me in the same way that my parents did, and demand that I give her a job, forcing me to repeat the entire scenario, so I ignored her initial call. But then she contacted me a couple more times and messaged me, stating it was an urgent matter and she wanted to speak with me. She assured me that I would not need to worry because she would not expect anything from me. She explained that she simply wanted to share something that had been bothering her for some time. So I opted to answer the phone and we talked today. She explained that she had been despondent for several weeks and had not spoken to anyone, disregarding all texts and emails she had received, including those from relatives. It wasn't until a few days ago that she read those messages and understood that everyone was talking about how unfair it was for our parents to expect me to provide her a job, especially when they had never treated me properly. Claire was perplexed because she had been speaking with our parents on a daily basis for the past few weeks, but they had not said anything about such family events. She had talked with them after reading those messages and inquired if they had done anything of the such, but they flatly refused, claiming they had no idea what was being alluded to. She suspected they were lying to her, so she called me instead to find out the truth. She mentioned that she had spoken with our parents about her work predicament and how distraught she was. She'd never asked for my help. So she couldn't understand why they'd enlisted me, and then tried to force me to contact her and offer her a job when she hadn't asked for it. After some deliberation, I decided to tell her the truth, because I believed she deserved to know what our parents had been up to behind her back. I gave her the entire thing that they had told me. I explained that once they told me about her position, they told me that I needed to get her a job and help my family since she was not in a good place right now, and they didn't want her to suffer. I informed her that while their initial aim was to really aid and support her in getting her life back on track, it gradually degenerated into harassing me, which I was not okay with. I told Claire that I was very sad about her employment because I knew how important it was to her and how much work she had put in. It couldn't have been easy being laid off like that. But truthfully, she knew we never got along and wouldn't function well together, which is why I denied our parents' request. Claire seems to comprehend. She informed me that she was not interested in working with me. She did not intend it offensively, but she was simply not in the appropriate frame of mind to work with anyone right now, so she was taking a break on deliberately. Our parents had given the impression that she had no proposals worth considering, but she did. She was only holding out because she wanted to rest. It was her personal choice. She wasn't upset, but she made the decision to not work for a while on her own. She was frustrated, so she vented to me for a while and I let her. Even though we weren't on the greatest of terms anymore, I believed she needed it. After we had a complete chat about it, she told me that she was really upset about what our parents had done to her because it made her appear desperate, and gave people the wrong impression, as if she was attempting to persuade our parents to compel me to hire her. She told me she was going to talk to them about it and she apologized for everything I had been through. I thought it was quite mature of her, and I honestly felt like she had matured a lot over the last 5 years, especially after being laid off. I suppose she understood that nothing is permanent, and that she shouldn't be so haughty. Perhaps that was a lesson in disguise. Anyway, we weren't able to make things right, but we did have a decent conversation, which I think is enough for me. Update 4: Claire and I chatted by phone a few days earlier. After our chat, she stated that she would speak with our parents and confront them about what they had done. She did this and it did not go well. Our parents were defensive, claiming that they were only trying to help her since they didn't think her decision to take some time for herself was a good one. They insisted that she resume her search for a better career immediately. They ended up in a massive quarrel because Claire accused them of trying to control her life from the start and never allowing her to make her own decisions, even as an adult. Of course my folks were upset about it. They began listing all of the things they had done for her, which were the typical things parents do for their children. I'm not sure why they always feel it's appropriate to talk about it as if it were a favor. It wasn't a favor, they had to do it regardless. The fight escalated to the point where Claire no longer speaks to them. And who do they blame for all of this? Yes, they're blaming me again. I just don't get how I can become the scapegoat for almost every problem they end up in. This time, no personal confrontations occurred. Instead, they just decided to create a Facebook post about it. Lucky for me, all of our relatives rushed to my aid and called my parents out on their stupidity. They reminded them that they had been bad parents not just to me but also to Claire in some ways because they continued to attempt to control and push her, especially when she was already going through a difficult time. They should have been there for her morally and emotionally, encouraging her. Instead, they were putting her down even more and portraying her as the evil guy. After receiving several comments from relatives, my parents decided to erase the post and block everyone in the family. To summarize, pretty much everyone has ostracized them now, which I am really glad about. Claire has apologized for mistreating me in the past, and we want to work on improving our relationship in the future. But for now, my wife is the most important thing in my life and I am very happy to be a father.